Hey everyone, and welcome to Cozying Up with a Clear Cut, where we get up close and personal with women that inspire us. Today we have the wonderful Polly Rodriguez,
Hi.
co-founder and CEO of Unbound, a sexual wellness company.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
Sure, I'm happy to be here.
Of course, we want to know about, how did you get started in like the sex toy, sex wellness industry? I love like your whole vibe and website. I feel like it's so accessible for women. It doesn't make, sex toys seem something that they should be like ashamed about or like awkward. And I just want to, how did you get to that point?
Yeah, my mom always loves having to talk to our family about this.
Oh my God, I'm sure.
No,
it's interesting.
like
Family conversation.
the first Thanksgiving I went home, I remember being like, how am I going to explain to my family what I do? So yeah, I worked actually for a senator briefly on Capitol Hill and then in management consulting and then at a dating startup, and noticed kind of at the time Glossier, Warby Parker, Casper were all first starting and, really embracing the direct-to-consumer model of cutting out distributors and middlemen. And with millennials in particular shopping predominantly online made a lot of sense. And for me, there was always this question as to like, vibrators, lubricants, and accessories are this massive industry and category, but there's no dominant brand name really, and there's certainly weren't any direct-to-consumer brands tackling the space. I myself, along with pretty much everybody that works at our company, has a personal story as to why they're kind of passionate about solving this problem. None of us come from the adult industry historically, but all of us, just by coincidence, are women, and I think all had a pretty terrible shopping experience when we went to go buy these products for the first time.
When was the first time you went shopping for one of these products?
Yeah, so for me personally, when I was 21 years old, I went through a colorectal cancer diagnosis and went through menopause as a result of radiation treatment. And I had a good friend who was a nurse practitioner who sat me down and said, you're probably going to want to buy some lubricant and a vibrator. And I grew up in the Midwest where the only place that sells these products at the time was a Hustler. I might still be this way, but in St. Louis, it was just a Hustler or Hollywood. So I ended up in like a strip mall.
Oh my God, and that's so awkward for like a young woman to walk into one of those stores and like ask for lubricant and a vibrator, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, and just like, it's an intimidating, I think going in store is intimidating in general. And like, so to me it was kind of like I felt a lot of like shame and embarrassment about the fact that I was like going through menopause at such a young age, and then compounded on top of that was kind of this in-store shopping experience that just felt really embarrassing. So I think that also has a lot to do with kind of like where I was at as a person, but fast forward like 10 years later and we created Unbound because we wanted to make the shopping experience a lot better.
Totally. And actually I feel like shopping for diamonds can be a little bit similar too.
Yeah.
It's really intimidating, like walking into a jewelry store and feeling like I don't know anything. Like, do I sound dumb, like asking questions? I mean, obviously, for a young woman asking for a vibrator from maybe like a man working at a Hustler is like not the best experience, and probably, a lot of women just won't even shop for those type of products because they're scared.
Yeah, and I feel like with diamonds, it's funny because I'm about to turn 33, and all my, like I would say the majority of my friends are married now or like getting married or whatever, and it's so interesting because I know so little about it, and I would like, it's so funny because I shared with my best friend who just got engaged that I was coming on this podcast. And I was like, look at these rings. But I was like, I have no idea. Like, there's so many elements to it.
Yeah.
Like clarity and cut and all this stuff.
And it can get like so niche. And that's why like, and there's so much, it's so opaque. So our goal is always to like make everything transparent and educational and accessible. And I think that's what you're doing too for sexual wellness.
Yeah, I mean, I think the millennial consumer in general cares so much more about like the quality of the products themselves. Like for us, the FDA doesn't regulate the products, and so there are a lot of
you're putting these on in
right,
your body.
Right. And I know with diamonds, there's so much conversation around like ethics and the ethics around sourcing and all of that. And so I think it's really interesting to see this new generation of startups that are being created with a focus on transparency and education.
Yeah, totally.
Because millennial consumers, I think, just want to be more informed in general.
So a lot of people have ideas and see white spaces in the industry, right? So you as a young woman looking and seeing like, wow, this is a space that is ripe for disruption, how do you take like the first steps? Like, what were your first steps into creating your own business in this space that you weren't really familiar with?
Yeah, I mean, I met my co-founder Sarah Jane through like a women in tech group in New York, and I was still working at a dating startup, and I was just kind of miserable there. And this was at the heyday of Birchbox, so there's a subscription box for everything, and we didn't have any money, and so we started off by saying, well, we'll do a subscription box that's curated and thematic, and I took out a bunch of credit cards and bought inventory and would sell it out. But I also worked like 2 part-time jobs on the side for the first 2.5 years.
And you were doing this full time?
Well, I did it at first full time. I like had saved up $5,000, and I was like, this will be enough. I'll get the business off the ground by the time I run out of money. And that was just a really naive notion. So of course I ran out of money and was like, okay, I need to get not just 1 part-time job, but 2 part-time jobs. So I did that for like 2.5 years before we finally got to a scale with traction where I could get meetings with investors, because they want to see really impressive numbers before they talk to you, especially for consumer businesses. Like if you have a product, they really, like, sometimes I feel like it's easier if you're a software startup because you can raise money without even having a product or anything. But if you're a direct-to-consumer company or a consumer-focused company, they really want to see traction before they meet with you.
I feel like that's true for some instances, but there are a ton of instances for D2C companies that I see. They're like, oh, I just have this idea and I raised like $6 million and now I'm like the hottest new thing. And so I think there's like this notion amongst people that want to start a consumer-focused direct-to-consumer business where they see all those types of instances, and they don't realize like there are a ton of businesses that have to like grind for years in order to get traction, in order to even get a serious meeting with someone. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, only 10% of startups, like in general, raise any type of funding. And, especially as female founders in the world within venture funding, only 2% goes to women. So it's such a small sliver of female founders that are even getting into those meetings to have them at all. I think that we hear these narratives of like the Warby Parkers and the Caspers of the world, and I think there's such a small percentage of like the businesses that are out there, and those stories get amplified. But ultimately, the people that are able to raise funding without like an idea or proof of concept or anything are people that either have a really strong network.
Yes. You're part of the club.
Right. And I think as somebody, certainly I did not have any of those connections. And so it's hard, because I think if you're one of those people that can just raise millions on an idea, it's probably either because you come from that world or you know someone who does.
And I feel like people that have ideas that want to start businesses, especially women, shouldn't feel like discouraged if they're not part of that crew. It does take hustle, though. Like, you will probably have to take out some debt, like spend a couple years proving it out before, banging down those doors and getting those meetings. And that's kind of just like how it is. It doesn't happen overnight for everybody.
No. And you have to, and sometimes I sometimes get frustrated because I'll have a lot of people reach out and be like, can I have introductions to your investors? And they like don't have a website, and I'm like, I can't. I was like, and I sound like the gatekeeper, but I'm like, I don't want to ruin your shot at getting this funding, but I'm telling you right now, they're just not going to cut you a check if there's nothing built. And I think it's hard and it's frustrating, because if you're the founder and you're the entrepreneur, you're like, okay, so I have to like pay my rent, pay my bills, grow this company, try to figure out how to get a warm intro into invest. It's like, it is doing the impossible, and it feels that way. So if anybody's out there and you feel that way, you're not alone.
You're not alone. So how long did it take you, and who were your first investors?
It took me 2.5 years and over 300 no's before I finally closed a check.
And it's probably, in your space, it's a bit controversial. Yeah. And also, a lot of these investors are men. Could they even relate to your product?
Yeah, what was interesting was I actually found female investors to be more difficult.
Me too. Yeah. Oh my God, they're the
I mean, it's not. I have some female founders on my cap table that are like my biggest champions, and work so hard. But I think when you're a consumer-focused product that's catering to women, only 9% of venture partners are women as well, and so I think they're like overly judicious about like not wanting to play into a stereotype of like I only invest in like female consumer companies. And so if you're a female founder, you're like, but you're the one that's supposed to be like championing this because you understand the pain point
exactly
more than anybody else. But I actually found that the male investors were easier to get buy-in from.
And I think it goes back to like if you're not part of the club, then it's way harder. And I don't know why it's like that in tech, in jewelry, in fashion. It's like the women are kind of the most critical and harsh on other women.
Yeah, it's a weird mental complex, I think. But I also think the thing I learned is like you just have to prove them wrong by doing it.
Exactly. It's just they'll come around, but it's a harder sell. And I just feel like that's kind of like how women are brought up because it is competitive. There's only so many slots, like even in venture or tech. Now it's changing, which is kind of our goal for even like sitting down and like talking about these things to make it a little bit more comfortable to say like, hey, you're a woman, I'm supporting you, like we should like celebrate each other and both be successful.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Agreed. Is that the radiator?
Yeah, it is.
Oh.
So it took 2.5 years to get your first investment, and then how did you grow the business from the subscription box to like what it is now?
Yeah, that was why we wanted to raise the venture funding. I think we sold other people's products for the first 3 years, and in doing that got a very deep understanding of where there were gaps in the market and the products that other people were making, because it's an incredibly fragmented industry where the top 4 players make up less than 10% of the total market. Prices are artificially inflated because they're selling through distributors who are taking a 40% margin. And so we were, selling other people's vibrators and products, and customers would write in and say, I paid $160 for this vibrator and it broke after like a month. And then like we would reach out to the brands that we were buying from, and they're like, well, we don't really have a warranty process, like it's final sale. And it was such a bad experience that we realized there was a huge opportunity for us to make our own products, which is why we went out to raise the venture funding. But even that was difficult because VCs would look at us and be like, okay, but your business model is X, and now you're telling me you want to do Y. What makes you think you can do Y? You've never done it. And it's like, well, I've never done it because it costs like at least $1 million to do a run of production to get the products. So we really had to figure out a way to prove to them that we could manufacture. And so I took out like, a bunch of credit cards, and we started to make actually dual purpose jewelry. We noticed that like after 50 Shades of Grey, there was this huge interest in BDSM products, and they were really clunky and ugly, and like the packaging was like so hypersexualized. And so we thought, what if we made like an elegant line of dual purpose jewelry that like, yes, you can wear as handcuffs, but mostly they look at like just like bangle bracelets.
Oh my God, love that. So jewelry and sex toys merge.
Yeah, very much so.
So what are your best selling jewelry sex wellness products?
I mean, this one I'm wearing my like all-time favorite, which is definitely our best selling, which is a
and that just looks like a cool like ring.
Just like a a block, like a chunk of like a gold bar or whatever. This is one of the first ones we ever made. And we took this to TechCrunch Disrupt and got second place for it. Wow. But it's a haptic vibrator ring that you wear that took us 2 years to develop, to where we could get like the circuit boards and all the electronics small enough with a quality motor to where it could be a wearable. And what's really cool about it is when you move your hand, the vibration intensity will increase or decrease because it has an accelerometer in it, which is the exact same thing that when you flip your iPhone and the orientation changes, it's the exact same technology that's in the ring. So when you like move your hand in a certain way, the vibration intensity increases versus decreases, which is cool.
So you can wear this like out, but then the vibrations for like later in private, right?
Yeah, or like sometimes I'll just be like really stressed at the office, and I'll like just like try to get like my neck will be sore, and I'll just use it for that. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we saw was that in sex more broadly, 40% of women report having chronic difficulty reaching orgasm during penetrative sex, compared with less than 5% of men. And so we wanted to create products that could transition more seamlessly into either partnered sex or masturbation or any of those things. So the whole goal was to like elevate the design with the hope of incorporating these products less intimidating.
Make it less intimidating. Cool. So, but how did you see people wanting to like wear their products like out on display? Like,
Yeah, it was interesting. When we went to TechCrunch, all the guys were like, "Oh, it's so gross. It's like a vibrator ring." And I'm like, "You literally touch your penis every time you go to the bathroom. So like, you wash this in the same way I hope you wash your hands after you go to the bathroom." And it's just funny, the stigma around, I think, sexuality for women and how it makes people really uncomfortable. But women like loved it. Like we pitched in TechCrunch and we came in second place, and I was like heartbroken because obviously I wanted to win. But as I was leaving, I could not get even out of the room because all these women just kept coming up to me being like, "That's fucking awesome. Like what you're doing is amazing." And I think in the entrepreneurial journey, we have so much self-doubt about like, is this stupid? Like, are people going to hate it? Does this matter?
And a lot of people will tell you that it is stupid, so you have to like believe that they're wrong.
Right. And ultimately, the only person you should be listening to is your customer. And you can't build a startup in the early days that is for everybody. It has to be for a very specific group of smaller community and people, because you have to get them to really love what you're doing, and then they're going to share that with their friends. If you try to create like a one-size-fits-all model out of the gate, you're just going to get a bunch of people who kind of like it but aren't really enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, and you need like those hardcore people in the beginning. Yeah. And I'm sure it like is a conversation starter.
It is. And you know, because we're on the topic of jewelry, one of the things that inspired it was the history behind the cocktail ring, which was a ring that was created to foster conversation and to be a conversation piece. And I think for us, there's also a lot of symbolic power in, you can wear this as a ring and it's up to the wearer to disclose to, like, you know,
whoever asks about it.
Right.
Like, oh, I love your ring. You can say, thank you. Or it's actually a vibrator.
Right. Which I think to us also plays into like the more like political conversation right now about like what is consent and like how do we engage. I think like after the Me Too movement, there was such a kind of like we all pulled back because we were like, oh, like these conversations are not appropriate, which is a like necessary, like 100% agree with that collective response. But I think now it's this moment of like, okay, well, now what? Like, how do we engage in healthy consent-driven conversations? And so I think for me, at least, the ring symbolizes an opportunity to try to navigate those conversations in a way that is thoughtful, because it's never going to be black and white, you know? Like, there were all these startups that came out that were like, an app for consent, where it was like during sex you like roll over and like sign your name on the app to like, but like that's so not how consent works. No, right? Like
that's not how it happens, like when you're out and like,
and also like you can change your mind after signing this weird contract. Like consent,
things can change. Yeah.
So like I just think it's interesting to see how we kind of struggle to navigate situations that aren't so binary and black and white. So yeah. But I want to talk more about your company.
Okay.
And diamonds and stuff.
Okay, so we can go from spark to sparkle. So my last question is, what is your spark? Like, what is the thing that ignites your passion, your desire to like keep moving forward, no matter how difficult things are for you?
Honestly, it's two things. One is definitely the other women in my life. I think like I was really lucky that I had two grandmothers who started their own businesses. My mom's worked my whole life. My sister is fucking brilliant and changing the world. And I think that learning that at a young age now, like the women, femme and non-binary founders that are in this space, we're so supportive of each other. And I look at a lot of other verticals like the scooter wars, you know, the Uber versus Lyft, the Twitter versus Facebook versus Snapchat, and like it's always going to be competitive and innate to capitalism is competition. But I think one thing that is really nice about the space I'm in, which is like femtech more broadly, is how supportive the founders are of one another. Yeah. And we really champion each other, because ultimately I think we acknowledge that like we're not fighting against each other so much.
You're creating something
we're
together.
We're fighting against the patriarchy.
Yeah.
Like, we're fighting against the fact that like, you know, there's so few female founders and so few female-founded businesses that end up raising venture funding and becoming multi, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of revenue type businesses. So, yeah, I think that was a very long-winded answer to, I think the thing that gives me spark is, like, the women that I work with and the women in my life, for sure.
And I just think it's so cool, like, how you're taking this thing that's taboo that most people feel like kind of self-conscious about discussing, and bringing like a new narrative and like empowering people to like, you know, embrace it and feel like comfortable with it.
Yeah, thanks. That's nice. Nice way to say.
So I wanted to give you a spark ring.
What?
Yeah.
No way.
So this
For
is
reals?
yeah.
Oh my god.
So this is our new ring, and it's called our spark ring, and it's supposed to represent like whatever ignites your spark whenever you're feeling down or like people are saying no, just to look down and like feel good
This
about
is
yourself.
amazing.
This isn't like a pinky ring size, but if you want a different size,
No.
we'll send you a
This
a
is
new
the
one.
nicest. Are you for real right now? Oh my god. This is so cute. I have like my fingers are like fat and swollen right now, but
So
like, it's
we
so
can
cute.
send you one of the right size.
No, oh my god. This is beautiful. What a great idea.
Yeah, so it's
Thank
just
you.
a reminder that, you have women there that are supporting of you and you're doing all the right things.
Oh my god, you guys are killing it.
But I also want to show you this, and I know that you said that you liked antique jewelry.
I love antique jewelry.
So this is actually the diamond that we showed in the last episode because you both liked antique diamonds, and I was like, well, this is an 8-carat antique cushion cut.
What? Oh my.
And I just like you can't really compete with it, so I thought it's just
this is
fun.
like in Titanic when it's like the heart of the ocean, but in a wedding. I like. Oh my. Okay, wait. Will you teach me? Will you teach me about this?
So
Sorry.
this is an antique cushion. So basically, there was an old mine cut, which is the ancestor of today's modern day cushion, which has like chunkier facets. It's like kind of cool and charming. They have like small tables, high crown angles, and this is kind
I
of
have no
like
idea what any of that means. It means like the top of it is smaller,
small,
and
and
the
then
angles.
yeah, it's like a kind of like chunky little diamond.
Got it.
And it's like evolved into today's modern day cushion. This is something in between, so you can see like the facets are a lot bigger, big flashes of light. There's still like a little culet, which is like an extra facet at the point. But you still get like the kind of modern silhouette of like that square pillow look.
Gosh.
But I think they're really charming.
This is insane.
It's a pretty rare cut.
It's beautiful. And it is funny because like whenever I talk to people and they're like, what's about how it like sparkles and catches the light? I'm always like, okay. And then you see something like this and you're like, there's so many colors in it.
I
It's
know.
It's because it sounds pretentious when people
know.
say it.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I think it's also if you like, I come from such a working class family. Like my mom, her wedding ring is like, they're like just a bunch of like crappy sapphires. And like, like you see something like this and you're just like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful.
But what's also great about jewelry is that you don't need to have like an 8-carat diamond for it to mean something and have some special like
course.
emotional connection. And we always ask people to bring a special piece.
I did. I brought my special piece.
Yay!
Okay, hold this because
Let's see it.
if I accidentally walk out with that, you guys are gonna tackle me to the ground and be like, "Get back here!" Okay.
Ooh, a pin.
Yeah, so it's a pin, which like I still haven't really figured out how to wear it. To be honest, like sometimes I'll put it on a scarf, or on like the outside of my coat. But okay, so my great aunt Eunice was a really good cards player. And
What kind of cards did she play?
she played bridge.
Okay.
And she won this in a bridge game against a man named Henry or Harry Thaw, who's really famous because he murdered this famous architect called, his last name's Sanford. And there's this really famous murder, I want to say in like I don't remember, sometime in the I want to say like 1890s, but I really don't know. Or maybe it was the 1920s.
So did she know she was playing cards with a murderer? Did he become a murderer
He
after?
became a murderer after her.
Okay.
So she was playing cards against him. He went on to he like fell in love with this woman named Evelyn Nesbit in New York City, and it was this famous murder where it was in like Madison Square Park in this like tower where he murdered Stanford White, I think was his name, and he was a famous architect who did like the original like Penn Station and
How'd
the
he
post
kill him?
office with a gun. Like
Oh,
shot
wow.
and killed him and went to jail. But my Aunt Eunice won this pin that has all these sapphires in it. In
Sapphire
the card.
cabochons are so pretty.
Oh my gosh, how do you even know that? Wait, what are they?
So see how they're kind of rounded? They're not faceted like the diamond we just looked at, and that's called a cabochon cut.
Oh.
So, and they're bezel set, and they're super cool because they're kind of like all different hues of blue.
Yeah, so she won this in a card game, and my grandmother, Clara Jane, gave it to me because she was like, Aunt Eunice was this fierce spirit.
Yeah, that's a
who,
pretty
like,
badass
right?
story.
So she's like, I want you to have it, but I've never like really known what it was. She's like, I think they're sapphires, but
Yeah, they look like sapphires. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love how they're all a little different too.
Yeah, so cool. And now there's like this whole trend in like ombre colored stones, and this was
really?
like way ahead of the trend.
Oh yeah, this is from like, I want to say the late 1800s. And you can like just see how it's like held together, like with, I don't know, it's just crazy. But yeah, this is my favorite, I think, piece of jewelry that I own.
I love that.
For sure. So.
And all different pieces of jewelry can become like heirlooms, and you can pass them down, which is like awesome.
Yeah. Very cool.
I want to see how your ring vibrates.
Oh, this thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, how does it work?
Okay, so it's on right now. I wonder if I can like,
oh, whoa.
You can kind of hear it. That's the lowest setting. So if you put it.
Oh, that's powerful.
Yeah. And then this is the fourth setting. So if you hold it completely flat, hang on.
So are there like buttons?
Yeah, so the button's on the bottom. 3, 4. Okay.
And this is 18K gold plated, right?
Yeah, I wear this all the time, so it's a little faded. But so if you hold it flat like that, and then as you move it, the vibration speed.
That's so
increase.
Cool. Oh my god, that's like powerful.
Yeah. So it took forever. Oh my god, this thing took like years. It was so frustrating.
And is that like your best-selling piece? Like, what are your best sellers?
Our best seller is Bender, which is a vibrator that is internal and external stimulation. This is $128, so it's by far the most expensive thing on our website. And Bender's only like $69. So that one does pretty well. I'm curious though with you, like, what is the most common question people ask when they're like in the process of looking for? I'm assuming the majority of what you're focused on is helping people find a wedding ring. Or
yeah,
is
engagement
it not?
rings.
Engagement
Yeah.
rings.
So that's still like the bread and butter of our business, is making like the custom diamond engagement rings. But we do have like our fine jewelry line now too. But I would say it's changed and shifted a lot even in the past 2 years, where like 2 years ago, a lot of people in heterosexual relationships, the guy would come in like kind of clueless and be like, okay, like what do I do? Where do I start? And that's kind of how I started my blog, kind of helping these guys navigate the do's and don'ts. But now I would say like 90% of our customers are either shopping together as a couple, or if they want to have some sort of surprise, he has a laundry list of what it needs to be with like screenshots and everything. Like there's no like fucking up.
That's amazing.
So we've seen women like take control over this engagement proposal whole situation, and there's like I guess like gone are the days of like having to be like a complete surprise, and it's like, oh, I'll like take whatever I'll get, because it's a really expensive purchase.
Yeah,
and it's
you have to wear it for the rest of your life.
You have to wear it every day for the rest of your life, hopefully. And like a lot of women are even like chipping in for their own rings now.
Well, hell yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know, I'm like such a, I would feel weird if somebody bought my ring for me, unless I was like buying one of equal worth for them. I don't know, but I just, I also like don't usually let people pay for
I think this is like kind of like the first generation where like women are probably making the same, if not more, than their male partners, and they have they're just as informed and kind of like, or honestly more informed on what they want. So I think there's less of a taboo around it, and like you can still have like a very romantic like proposal, but just know what the ring's gonna look like.
Yeah. What's the number one mistake you see people make when buying an engagement ring?
There are a few. I think one is to not like set a budget, because it is a slippery slope, and you can always, spend $5,000-$10,000 more and get something slightly nicer. So I think like sticking to that is.
Wait, can I ask what like the number one thing is where it's like the upsell where they end up spending $10K more than they intended? Is it size? Is it clarity? Is it? So
it's all like a balance. I would say probably size is like the number one driver, and then some people like really want to spend extra on color too. But yeah, definitely size is, and it's really funny because it's always the same thing where if I'm like talking to the guy, they're like, oh no, we can go way smaller in size, but quality is like more important. And the girl's like, no, let's max for size, still keep the quality like decent. So it's always a conversation, like a battle.
So interesting. Why do you think you see that pattern?
I think because the guy's not wearing it. So he's like, I want to make like a sound investment, analyze like all of the details. And it's like, okay, like we can go 1 carat, but I want it to be like a DVVS one, which is like really high quality.
I have no idea what that means.
When a girl's like, I rather spend the same exact money, but get 2 carats, and I'm fine going to like an I or J, SI1, SI2, as long as it doesn't look crappy, you know, as long as it still faces up really nice and white and sparkles and has no visible inclusions. Like, that's what, like, women really care about.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's so much to know. It's so funny how, like, we're in such different fields, but they are very similar.
Yeah.
It's so intimidating. And I just kind of, like, take this attitude of, like, well, I don't know anything about it, so da-da-da-da. But it's like, that's embarrassing. I should know more about it.
Well,
and
that's why we're, like, producing content. Like, the goal is to kind of make it, like, more accessible, less intimidating, like, so you're a little bit, like, more knowledgeable. And I think you're doing, like, the same thing, because I'm really intimidated about...
Yeah, I was too. I mean, and I think it's, like, it's about being brave enough to, like, admit when you don't know.
And not everyone can know about everything. Right. So, yeah.
Wow. Awesome. You're doing really cool stuff.
So
I'm gonna like definitely buy some of these for some other female founder friends. That's so cool that you're doing like just high-end jewelry as well. That's not necessarily engagement rings.
Yeah, so it came like out of demand. People just actually from this ring.
I love that. I saw that on your website. Thanks. It's so pretty.
I designed this for myself with like extra diamonds from my bracelet, and I was just posting it with engagement rings, and people were like, "Can you recreate that?" And that kept happening for like a lot of wedding bands and just like staple pieces of jewelry. So that's kind of how the collection was born. It only was like this past January, and now like we're only designing things based on like what our community is like begging for.
Yeah, because you guys have a massive Instagram following. You're killing it. I mean, because what's more fun to look at on
than
Instagram
diamonds? It's
diamonds,
like it's
right?
pretty easy. Yeah.
But also, okay, one more question.
Yeah.
So like in our business, the minimum order quantities are really high because we're a consumer product, right? Like our unit economics are like really low. Obviously,
so you have to buy a lot of inventory, right?
Yeah. So like, is it the same way in this industry?
So we don't hold any inventory.
Oh, that's amazing.
Every single piece, even like our stuff on the site, is made to order. So like once it's ordered, and then we put it into production.
Oh.
So we don't have a ton of overhead, which is good because it's expensive.
How long does it take to do that?
Depending on the piece, normally like 2 to 3 weeks for everything.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, so we tell everyone, like, it's on the website, like, give us 2 to 3 weeks. We'll stock up on like our most popular pieces, especially for holiday season, because like I know people are gonna reach out being like, can I have this for Christmas the week before? So we have like just a small like stockpile. But yeah, everything else is like made to order.
Okay, one more question, then I'll be done, I promise. What's the busiest time of year for engagement rings, do you find?
So there are engagement seasons. It's kind of like right now for purchasing, and it's going to be Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's are like a hot time because people are with their families, they're going on vacations, like it's just like the time to propose. And the second peak proposal season is in early summer, so like June, July. July 4th is like the hottest weekend to get engaged. Yeah, because people are on vacation.
They're like, I love America and I love my significant other. Let's do it.
Because people are on vacation or with their families. So I would say Christmas and 4th of July are like the hottest times to propose. Yes.
Oh my God, I'm going to share that with everybody over the holidays. It's like a fun fact.
But a lot of people will come back after Christmas because they'll have been with their families talking about maybe getting engaged. And so like you'll have like a little spike like right after too. But those are like the hottest times, definitely.
Wow, I learned so much today.
Me too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for being here with us. I'm so excited about this episode.
Yeah, it's really good. Thanks.
So where can people follow, find you, buy your products, all that good stuff?
Yeah, they can buy our products at unboundbabes.com, and then our handle on Instagram. If you like funny memes, that's our jam. It's just Unbound Babes.
Cool. And if you want to watch and see all of the jewelry that we were looking at, feel free to go on our YouTube. We're at The Clear Cut, and of course follow us at The Clear Cut. Thanks, guys.